I interviewed Bernard Huang, the founder of ClearScope, and as the founder of iExplainer, I wanted to know everything that is going to change with the rise of AI and ChatGPT, especially in terms of search and content marketing. In the past, you could just have put a few keywords into a long-form article and you may have been found in Google. But now with the rise of AI and ChatGPT, that no longer holds true. ChatGPT is searching for relevant information on the internet, and if you want to be part of that information, you need to optimize for AI and for ChatGPT and not just for Google. Now, how all of that works and what the implications are for content marketing and SEO, that is exactly what we're going to discuss in this interview. So stay tuned and learn what the future will hold for you.
My background in SEO goes back 12 years at this point. Traffic is largely diminishing. In this new world, we are no longer competing for traffic. A lot of users are turning towards ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity. Google has AI overviews, which basically summarize answers on behalf of users. We, as brands, need to be competing for influence in the model. In the future, and I strongly believe this to be true, you're not going to search. You're going to have a conversation with an agent.
In this new age of AI, you need to be a real expert in your field. Does it make it harder to be mentioned or to be picked up, or would it make it maybe easier? Hello, hey Bernard, how are you going? So nice that you're here in this interview with iExplainer. Thanks for making the time. You're the founder of ClearScope. I'm the founder of iExplainer, about how to use AI for marketing and other purposes for the everyday professional. Maybe you'd like to start off with a little introduction on what ClearScope is about and your background in marketing and SEO.
Sure. Well, Victor, thank you so much for having me. It's a true honor to be a guest. My background in SEO goes back 12 years at this point. I started as a growth hacker at a Silicon Valley company called 42 Floors. And after hacking a bunch of growth, turned out that SEO was our best channel. So we scaled an entire SEO strategy where I was buying links and doing all the, bad and nasty stuff that you're not supposed to do, and got in trouble with Google. But, that's a story for another day. From there, I transitioned to starting an SEO agency where we worked with a lot of different high growth companies like DoorDash, Strava, Teespring, Compass, and we learned very quickly that there was a lot of different techniques to improve your overall SEO presence. One of the techniques that worked really well was taking entities from a natural language processing perspective and using that to inform whether or not a piece of content is actually covering the relevant topics that an AI algorithm is looking for. We took that, we ran with the concept, and we bootstrapped ClearScope as a content optimization software about 9 years ago. So we helped content teams from HubSpot, NVIDIA, Deloitte figure out how to write high quality content. And fast forward to 2022, when ChatGPT came out, the entire SEO industry basically was rocked. And as of this year, we've rolled out a completely brand new toolkit to help people understand how to tackle AI search. You may have heard it called Answer Engine Optimization, or AEO, Generative Engine Optimization, or GEO. And our software now helps everybody understand what's going on in that particular space, and also to track the different prompts across Gemini and GPT, and then to build content that has a high likelihood of influencing the models, winning citations, and getting your brand mentioned in AI
in
responses.
ChatGPT instead of just mentioned in Google. And
right.
That sounds to me that will completely change the ball game in terms of making yourself known in the world. And we'll talk a lot about that more in this conversation. But we'll cover that. We'll cover all the implications for marketing, maybe some technical things as well. And of course, I'd like to learn more on what ClearScope does and what the future of AI will bring to us.
Yeah, it's a wild world, but definitely let's dive in and let's cover everything.
Okay, so today we're talking about agentic search. It's a bit of a new term. It's basically how an AI agent can help you in search compared to how a search engine would do it in the past. Of course, there's still search engines, but it looks like now the ballgame has changed from SEO to GEO, the Generative Engine Optimization. And before we delve into that, maybe just a quick recap of what classic search engine optimization would entail. I listed here a couple of things that a traditional SEO marketer would focus on. Of course, there's lots and lots more. The Google algorithm is so complex, there's so many dating points. So it's not only this, but I'd say that this is what a normal SEO specialist would focus on. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So you're definitely targeting keywords that have monthly search volume that people are typing into Google. You're using latent semantic indexing or LSI keywords, fancy way to say entities or topics surrounding the body of content that you're writing about. You're building links from authoritative sources, and you're making sure your technical SEO is up to snuff. And in that old world, you would get rewarded with search traffic that Google would send to your site because you ranked in the top spots on Google for the keywords that you care about.
Okay, that's good to know. And it has, of course, with agentic search, it has changed from keywords to more of a landscape. So I summarize that into the next slide, like how SEO and generative engine optimization would work in this new age of AI. I learned that instead of just focusing on a keyword, you're more focusing on all the keywords that are around it and depth of content knowledge. So just not one post or one optimized page, but focusing on being the real expert on something. And on top of that, to also be able to let the ChatGPT or other agent let it summarize and ensure that they can crawl it in such a way that they will mention you. Because the whole aim of the game is not only to be mentioned by Google, but the aim of the game is that ChatGPT or Gemini or other platforms will quote you for your knowledge. And in order to have that, they need to be sure that you are an expert on what your site is about. Is that roughly it, or would you like to add a few things on how it works?
No, no, you hit the nail on the head. I can add a lot of things. These are just more of the technical speak, if you will,
Mm.
since I'm so deep in the
Yeah, I'm
weeds
interested. I'm learning.
in
Let me know.
yeah, in the language. So when you have on your first, point, focus on concept clusters and semantic intent, why this is important is because when you're interacting with an AI agent, whether it be AI mode or Chat GPT, what these different language models are doing is that they're performing a variety of searches on your behalf. In technical GEO speak, we've been calling this a query fan out. So, as an example, if I were researching best TVs for an apartment, then
Mm.
and I queried that to ChatGPT. ChatGPT would then subsequently perform three separate searches where it says, okay, well, what are the best high definition TVs? It would also perform a search to say, what are the best compact TVs? Because it's recognizing that I am in an apartment and I probably don't have as much space than, say if I were to live in a house. It's also
Mm.
saying, it's also performing the search, like what is the best 43-inch TV, just as another example of a smaller TV that could fit into a smaller space. What this is doing then is saying that, in a traditional SEO world, you might just say, well, I sell TVs and I care about the keyword best
Mhm.
TVs. But since these models are performing research on behalf of the user, it becomes way more important that you have content created that targets the entire journey that a user might be interested in. So the concept of creating concept clusters then means that I should create content for best TVs for small spaces, best TVs for, like 43 inch, that kind of stuff. And the
Mm.
more granularly I can break that out, the more surface area that I present to the language model to prove that I am indeed an authority on TVs, and that's why you should trust my research. So that's what we're finding as the key difference, right? You're no longer chasing after keywords, you're chasing after topics. And then from a traffic perspective, what we're finding is that traffic is largely diminishing, right? Google has AI overviews, which basically summarize answers on behalf of users. A lot of users are also turning towards ChatGPT,
Mm.
Claude, Perplexity, and just
Yeah.
simply asking those AI agents for the answer that they're getting back. In this new world, just to be crystal clear, we
Mhm.
are no longer competing for traffic. We, as brands, need to be competing for influence in the model, right? Because in the future, and I strongly believe this to be true, in the future, you're not going to search. You're going to have a conversation with an agent, whether,
Yeah.
again, that's AI mode, Apple Intelligence, Microsoft Copilot, whatever it may be. And these agents will then provide you answers to your questions. In this new
Yeah.
world, we are then designing our content and our websites to be the recommendation that these agents are going to be giving for the questions that users are going to be asking. So the equation becomes, how do I influence this agent to recommend my brand rather
Mhm.
than how do I rank a piece of content so that somebody will click on it, right?
Yeah.
Completely different landscape of how to think about what's going on.
In this new age of AI, you need to be a real expert in your field in order to be mentioned. Does it make it harder to be mentioned or to be picked up, or would it make it maybe easier? Because with AI, you can also generate a lot of content about TVs and related searches. So in a way, using AI, you could expand your expertise and pretend or a little bit fake it till you make it and sound like an expert on TVs, even though you really may not really be one.
I can answer that with a variety of different approaches, ranging
Mm-hmm.
from, what in traditional SEO speak we would say black hat, which is,
Yeah,
you probably shouldn't be doing it. It's against what
I
Google
know.
and, these kinds of things care about. But yes, in a nutshell, AI has made written content largely a commodity. Therefore, it is very easy to scale a content strategy, right? We could literally take best TV 42 inch, best TV 43 inch,
Yeah,
go down the list
all the keywords.
and
Yeah,
have,
exactly.
right, singular pieces of content that address each one of these different concepts. And in a way, it would work. But in another way, you would probably eventually be caught by a spam team, whether it's OpenAI spam team or Gemini spam team, and then they would be, they would frown upon that. So that's like on the really black hat side. And then
Yeah.
on the really white hat side, you have all of these people running around saying, well, you got to get more brand mentions, right? Like the fact that Samsung gets mentioned alongside TV very
Mm-hmm.
frequently means that Samsung is likely to be a recommended TV option, right? And then, these white hat folks then just say, well, build a great product. And then people will want to recommend your brand alongside, the product category that you care about. Now, as much as I would like to believe that, which it is true, but that takes, years, decades, right, to
Yeah,
build a
to
brand
build.
that's that
Mm.
recognizable. You kind of have to be a little, I guess, wanting to take a few shortcuts. And so I think the middle ground, at least currently from a tactical perspective, is cover the topics that make sense, right? Compact TVs are probably TVs from 18 inches to 44 inches, right? And so create a piece of content on that, create a piece of content on mid-size TVs, and create a piece of content on large TVs, right? You've covered most of the bases. And then tactically speaking, right, if you're a new, say, TV manufacturer, go to Reddit and start to comment on different
Yeah.
threads to bring up your brand and, buy some PR that says, hey, there's this new, TV manufacturer that has entered the space and,
Mhm.
they focus on LEDs or whatever your unique spin is. And that will then further give these models confidence that your brand is legit. Pair your brand with the product category that you want to be associated with, and then you have the content to back up the AI models when they go and scrape the content to then understand, okay, when I'm recommending a TV, I should go with Bernard's TV and Samsung
Yeah.
as the
Yeah.
recommendations.
So basically, even though AI could potentially expand the options for black hat SEO, which of course is not great, at the same time, the content moderation team at OpenAI, but also Google, will pick it up. I'll learn from this that we should not use AI to just pretend and fake it till you make it. In a way, AI will protect the general people from all this content that's not really expertise.
That's the hope. That's the hope. There will always be loopholes, and once those loopholes are found and exploited, the teams will go and patch them, and then the loopholes will be fixed.
How to stay relevant in this current age with AI. For that, there is the age-old rule from Google that you already mentioned, the EEAT rule. I pull it up here for a moment. For people that are not yet that familiar with SEO, it is important to Google that your content shows you have genuine experience, like what you write about is about your experience or your first-hand or second-hand research. That you're an expert in your field. An expert sounds like a big word. You don't necessarily need to have a PhD in what you're writing about, but even if your website is about cupcakes, you need to have some experience in making cupcakes and how to do that. Authoritativeness means that you're a bit of an authority in that field, that people endorse you for your skill. So you're just not baking some random cupcakes, but people actually say, yeah, the cupcakes that you made are amazing and really good, and I want to copy your recipe. And with that comes trustworthiness, that people believe that what you say is true and correct. And when like this is already the SEO rules from the pre-AI era, it sounds like they still exist. They may even become more important. And out of these four, I would personally say, like expertise, you can rely on AI to some extent. AI can make mistakes, but you can borrow a lot of expertise. Have an expansive search, and it quotes maybe 10 scholarly articles in your document that you don't need to research yourself anymore. So in a way, you could kind of borrow it, even though it's leaning towards black hat. But then for experience, AI, of course, doesn't have experience. And trustworthiness is still something, can we trust it or not? So given these four rules that still exist, how do I use AI whilst I know that I need to satisfy these parameters?
So I'll try my best to summarize it in a succinct manner. EEAT, experience, expertise, authority, and trustworthiness came about from a Google PR campaign that Google has launched over the last few years. Where this exact terminology came from was the manual search evaluator guidelines. And what that means is that Google employs hundreds, if not thousands, of people whose sole job is to inspect the search engine results and then rate whether or not content that is ranking in those spots meet these criteria that you've laid out over here. It's like Tinder. They literally are like swiping left and right. They're like presented with
Yeah.
a content experience, like good or bad. And they're like, yeah, this one looks good, this one looks bad. And essentially what they're doing is that they're training their machine learning to identify patterns and variables that say, this is a good piece of content because there's an author bio and they're providing citations and so on and so forth. And this is a bad piece of content because, there is no author bio and we don't trust what they have to say. So that's essentially where this concept of EEAT came from. What it's actually representing, though, is the fact that Google uses real user engagement signal to inform whether or not content results on the top spots should belong in the top spots. A very easy example is, let's go back to TVs. Say I'm searching best TVs for apartments, and we have CNET as number one and Wirecutter as number two. Google's
Mhm.
actually measuring using Chrome data and all the other data that they collect on us to say, okay, well, user A when presented with CNET on top and Wirecutter on the bottom, clicked on
Mhm.
CNET, stayed there for 5 minutes, came back, clicked on Wirecutter, stayed there for 20 minutes, never
Mm.
came back to Google, right? So if
Mm.
Google looks at that, they might say, well, that result number two that had 20 minutes and we never saw the user again, maybe
Mhm.
that result number two should be result number one. And
Yeah.
so the next day, you might see Wirecutter as number one and CNET as number two.
Yeah.
And they rinse and repeat this experience or experiment. And then over time, they say, okay, yes, this should be result one, this should be result two. And they're basically using user engagement signal to inform, those specific rankings.
Yeah, and I understand. And in a way, Google has this advantage that it can track what users are doing, and it's testing the websites on its own audience in a way, and continuously optimizing. Is an AI agent doing the same thing, or does AI have the same knowledge? Because I understood that AI is based on all the information that's out there, and it's usually cut off by a certain date.
That's right.
Now, some can access the internet, so there's some improvements there. But the wide data variety that Google owns, and that they can draw from, that's maybe not as extensive for ChatGPT. Or maybe I'm wrong. I'm just curious.
Yeah. I mean, so that presents a very interesting question as we move into this era where, again, search or information retrieval becomes more around agents rather
Yeah.
than search and clicking on blue links. So, first off, some more background. What has come to light as of recent is, it was a news article. I think it came out a couple months ago. But essentially, what was discovered was that all of these different large language models are scraping Google, right?
Yeah.
So that's why Google, again, this is all like industry speak and stuff, but that's why Google implemented this change in how they serve the search engine results page. In the past, there was a way to say, give me the top 100 results, and Google would give you the top 100 results. What these large language models basically did was they queried exactly that particular, variable to say, give me just the top 100 rather than top 10. And then they would
Mhm.
get the top 100 results and they would then look at all of that content to then inform whether or not, the response that they're giving back to the end user is accurate, it's relevant, it's up to date. And they knew that by scraping Google content is already battle tested by user
Yeah.
engagement signal, right? So basically, it was a shortcut to high quality relevant content for any given topic. Google caught wind of it. Obviously they weren't happy, so they basically stopped that from happening, and you can't scrape the top 100 results on Google anymore. And that changed how large language models now query for this particular information. But anyways, long story short, what we're finding is that EEAT is kind of a dying concept.
Oh,
And
is it? I
what
thought it
I
was
mean,
still
yes,
relevant.
it's still relevant in SEO, but
Yeah.
what we're moving towards is a future world where users are not meant to engage with top ranking content, right? Like if you've been to AI mode or you use ChatGPT to ask a question, you're not clicking on any of the links. You are
Yeah.
simply getting an answer and a response back that the model believes to be relevant, high quality, that is based off of the top ranking search results.
Mm.
When AI mode eventually becomes the default way that people search, well, guess what? The user engagement signal goes out the door, at least from a
Yeah.
classical perspective of click on, result number one, stay for
Yeah.
X amount of time, right? That's not going to happen. And so these models actually have to start relying on different inputs to gather whether or not the content they're basically giving the user is actually good. So in that way, EEAT, right, signaled Google saying user engagement signal matters when people click on things. But if we're moving towards this world where people are no longer clicking on things, then does EEAT actually matter? And that itself, I think, is a very interesting question.
Yeah. Okay. So it still matters, but only as far as the agent relies on Google for the top results.
That's
And
right.
eventually, they will probably want to move away from that.
Exactly.
So for the short run, it gives Google a bit of an advantage with Gemini
Yep.
because they have both data sets in-house, whereas OpenAI needs to rely on Google as a third party, which is also their competitor. But that advantage will eventually dry up, you're saying.
I don't know about dry up, but it'll change, right?
Will
I think
change.
the idea of EEAT will be gathered through
Mm-hmm.
interactions with AI agents rather than, like users clicking on results. That whole concept, I think, is still TBD because basically, when you're interacting with ChatGPT, what determines whether or not the interaction is positive or negative, right? It's a very interesting question that I'm sure the machine learning specialists over there are thinking actively about. So, in one example, I could say, who is the first president of the United States? I could
Yeah.
ask that to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT would say George Washington. And then I would conclude my conversation with ChatGPT because I found my answer. In that particular outcome, the machine learning specialists at OpenAI could say, yes, we gave a great answer to the user's question. However, right, let's say I'm doing research on TVs, right? And I say, best TVs, and it says blah, 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 blah. And then I'm like, okay, but I live in an apartment, so best TVs for small spaces. And then it says, this, and that. And then I'm like, oh, and by the way, I'm kind of clumsy, so best durable TVs because I tend to knock things over, right? I'm having a dialogue now with this chat GPT experience, could we really say that, okay, because the first response we gave to the end user did not answer the question, that this is a bad experience? We can't say that, right? Because the user's
Yeah.
going back and forth, having a
Yeah.
conversation with ChatGPT. So in essence, right, user engagement signal, when you're talking about interactions with an AI agent, are not so crystal clear, right? What is a good experience? It's not just getting an answer and leaving, but it's also not having a, 50-page dialogue of you going back and forth with the agent. And so,
Yeah.
anyways, that's to say, okay, in this new world, I'm not sure how user engagement signal should be like used. And in that world, does experience, expertise, authority, and trustworthiness matter? And I don't know, right? It's too subjective, to like measure what that even means.
Yeah, because the same behavior, like Google could very clearly tell if the dwell time is longer, that means the user is more engaged. And if they
Exactly.
click and go back straight away, then they bounce, then they're not engaged. So that is
That's right.
very easy to say.
Yes.
Whereas with AI, you don't know if they like the response, they just want to refine this response.
Yes.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that's difficult to say.
It's
I
difficult to
get
say.
that, and
And
that will
so, yeah,
be
then it's hard. It's hard to know what we're trying to optimize for.
yes. And something I've noticed in ChatGPT is in the beginning it would always give you a lot of text straight away, but then
Yeah.
you need to read it all, which is also a bit annoying. And
Hmm.
now it often tries to refine the question. If I ask something to do or to generate for me, it asks me, do you want it this way or that way? And after once it's done, it's asking for like maybe I could do this next step or that next step. And that really helps in getting it more user friendly because what we don't want is all this generated text that you then need to sift through as the user. That's not really helping.
Exactly. The whole point of why this whole AI thing is happening and being so effective is that users don't want to read, right? They don't want to sift through that 2,000 word article, unfortunately. I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, but yeah, they just want AI to say, here's the answer, here's what you should do, here's why it matters, this and that. And if that's the case, then, a lot of these classical ideas no longer have as much weight.
I put forward a few goals that I think are important in nowadays online marketing. Personally, I'm an online marketer myself, and these are some goals that I set for myself for SEO and AI. But I just want to get your professional opinion if this is still what we should be focusing on, or if not, working on my online business, or if I'm working for a client and I want to get better results in Google and in AI, what should they really be focusing on now that EAT is a little bit devalued?
Yeah, great question. And I think the goals that you've mapped out here are excellent goals. I think the difference in approaching GEO versus SEO lies in the nuance of accomplishing the goals. So, goal number one, get found, ranked in SEO, and interpreted in AI. That is a great goal. In traditional SEO speak, we would say you start with keyword research, right? How many people are searching best TVs? And then you have a difficulty score that's attached to it, right? Lots of top ranking content has a bunch of backlinks pointing to it. So it's a difficult keyword, but 50,000 people per month search for it. So it's a valuable keyword, especially because it's
Mm-hmm.
best TVs and it has commercial intent. Therefore, I, as an SEO, will try to go after this keyword. That is the old SEO way of thinking about tackling, that particular model.
Mm-hmm.
In the new world of AI, what you have to think about is the topic, which is best TVs. And then you have to look under the hood of how AI models are performing additional research surrounding that particular topic. And in, GEO speak, we would call this AI web searches, right? So when you go and you ask ChatGPT best TVs, it says searching, right? When it says searching, what it's doing is it's fanning out a bunch of different research that it believes to be important for that particular topic. Again, it could be best TVs, best OLED TVs, best TVs for small spaces, cheapest TVs, so on and so forth. But it's basically spreading out its research across all of these different topics to then
Mm-hmm.
build a response to the end user.
I understand, and I was wondering in that content creation process, is it is there still a lot of room or I'll say valuation for human originality? Because AI can create a lot of content for you. How a human approaches it is still better or more unique than how AI approaches it. However, the other thought I had was, well, does AI actually recognize what is human creativity and what is AI made creativity? And does it even matter to the search engine?
I gave a rather in-depth and technical talk at Hrefs Evolve last year on this
Yeah.
exact topic. So, in again technical speak, what you're referring to is this idea of what we would call information gain. So, what do we mean by information gain? Basically, what large language models are at a very high level is it's a probabilistic autocomplete, right? It knows that certain words should follow certain other words, and then it
Mm,
knows certain sentences should follow certain other sentences, and it's able to build a response based on highly probable next actions, right? Next words, next sentences, next paragraphs. In that model, basically what you end up with is a lot of redundant concepts, right? Again, if we go back to now, let's say, who's the first president in the United States? Basically, first president United States, George Washington, is almost a one-to-one, if somebody says
yeah.
this, then the answer is that. And that was
Mm,
solved a long time ago with featured snippets in SEO. So, okay, what about originality? Does it matter? Is Google actually looking for that? Which then brought about this concept of entities and information gain. The, short answer to then what I discovered is that it doesn't matter.
doesn't
Um,
matter. So originality is not really something that AI values.
No, it's not.
No.
Yeah, because essentially what happens is that Google says, okay, cool. You're a new piece of content and you're talking about all of these original things. Let's
Mhm.
just test it. So they'll put me as position number three. They'll send some users there and say, you tell me, did that sound good? Did you like that? So Google actually has no idea. And it doesn't
Yeah.
care. It like
It,
honestly, literally doesn't care that you're providing new, unique, and interesting insights to the table. It just says, we'll just send some real users there and let's see what they say. And let's say everybody lands on it. It's this completely brand new article on TVs and why this model is different and how we should think about them moving forward. But everyone who lands there says, wow, this sucks. And then they leave and they never come back to my site. Google's going to look at that and say, yeah, okay, that sucks. So let's just get rid of that and forget about that. And that's essentially what happens. So yes, originality can be rewarded, but by default, it is not rewarded. What is
yeah.
rewarded is giving users an engaging and interesting experience, and that could be completely AI generated. It doesn't matter. It
It
just
doesn't
has
matter.
to be unique, and it just has to be engaging, and that's all that matters.
And something I want to learn about what you do at ClearScope. You build a platform where you can do exactly what you just talked about. Um, the it researches what's already out there. It ranks how hard it is to score on both Google and on AI platforms or agents, if I said it right. It provides a bit of a landscape instead of just keyword difficulty that classic SEO does. And then it generates an article for you based on the found keywords and the connectivity between all these keywords in the specific topic. Um, did I say it more or less right? I
Yeah.
wanted to check on that.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. So, right, we do traditional keyword research where we cluster together topics, but then we layer on the prompt to those topics, and then we show you the range of fan out queries that the AI is performing under the hood. So that way you can create content that matches, right, all of the different research angles that these
Mhm.
agents are performing. And then you want to create content, right? So then we have an AI content generator that then takes all of those lexical, latent semantic terms, packages them together for you so you know whether or not the content you're producing is entity rich and very relevant. And then you publish that. And then finally, we track all of this for you. So when you start to win AI citations and search traffic, you get alerted to say, hey, this page has now been cited by Gemini or GPT. So that's a good thing. And you should probably go back and make sure that those pieces of content are kept very fresh, very relevant, because AI is actually citing those and looking at it.
Which would be an amazing thing, of course. That's what we all want in this new day and age. It's basically this also both to create the content or identify, I should say, identify right keywords, then create it and then monitor it. And in a similar way that Google Console does it for you for your website, more or less. Is that what am I
Yep,
quoting it right?
that's right. Yes, yes. And so we do that for Gemini, we do that for ChatGPT, and of course we do that for your traditional Google search.
Okay, that is very interesting. I also tried it out for myself and on AI Explainer. I thought it was very interesting and it works very well. I made a few articles based on your software. If anyone who's listening today would like to check it out, there's a link below that you can see the software for yourself. It's maybe something you want to consider for your online business. But before we delve further into that, I would like to ask you a few more questions on the future of AI platforms. We talked a bit on how like AI agents will take over the reliance on Google, so to speak. Now that there's this big shift in tech, and Google is like the single monarch in this field. But now that we have these new players, could potentially OpenAI break further into market share? Like, could they, for example, start a browser that is AI powered, just like Google created Chrome? or other AI products, or am I just dreaming here? What does the future entail, you think?
I mean, you're not dreaming. That literally just happened like last week.
It is happening at the
OpenAI,
moment.
yeah, launched just called Atlas.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, yeah. The funny thing about it all is that Atlas is built on top of Chrome. So it all still, flows back to Google, if you will. But I think that, yeah, it's very interesting in that the future of search is conversational. And, more specifically, you're going to be looking at chatbot-like experiences, but across a variety of different applications, right? What we're starting to see is that, okay, if somebody, wants something a bit more research focused, they might go to Perplexity, right? If somebody wants something more coding focused, they might go to Claude, right? So different models are basically specializing in different use cases in different industry sets. And I think that that's exactly kind of how this world is going to unfold, right? Apple will have Apple Intelligence that may be powered by Claude or something, who knows? But different ecosystems will focus on different niches and use cases where they shine. And I think that that's where the industry is heading.
Okay. So then you will probably have a specific platform for a specific need. Like
Yes.
I think that most users, for any question you have, you just go to ChatGPT. Now we'll learn that maybe for some applications, Gemini, Hugging Chat, Claude, Perplexity could be better. And maybe in a few years we have a different platform for a different need. One
Yeah, sure.
generates your recipes, one
Yeah.
generates your training schedule, one is for your online marketing.
Yeah.
Is that a bit how it's going to go,
I
or you
think
think that
I
maybe
think
one dominant
basically
player
Google is going to win
again?
this
Okay.
space. I mean, they own Android, they own Chrome, they own YouTube, they own Google Search, they own Google Maps, they own Gmail, G Suite. They have all of the data already. So Gemini is going to be the best default AI engine. Yes, GPT will still, have market share, but yeah, then everybody else will fight for the specialized sorts of applications that I think we will see unfold.
Okay. So even though OpenAI was first with ChatGPT, you reckon that Gemini will be the overall market winner in a
Yes.
way,
It's
similar to
because,
how it went with mobile phones. Like Apple was late to the party, but then they became the market standard.
yeah, it's because Google already controls all of the surface area of user behavior. That's it, right? I just open up Chrome and Google's there. Or if I'm on Android, yeah, Google is there, right? So they've already basically established themselves as the default place to search. And
Mhm.
GBT it's fighting an uphill battle when it comes to that.
Yeah. Okay. That's very good to know. So at this stage, you should not be focusing on building your new AI platform, but you should be using the AI platforms that are out there and applying them to your online marketing
Yep,
in a
that's
way.
right.
Interesting. Well, we're nearly coming to the end of this interview. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Um, if anyone would like to try out ClearScope, there's a link with a special offer that is shared below this video, I believe, or I can also show it here on the screen in a moment. Um, Before we end, I just wanted to ask you, like, what is your number one top tip for any online marketeer or AI consultant? Like, what should people do tomorrow differently in the business schedules compared to how they today has been?
Yeah, I think stay curious, right? Like all these different LLMs, whether it's Claude, Perplexity, DeepSeek, Manus, and the list goes on and on. But embrace it, give it a shot. Like you'll be surprised in terms of how good and accurate it is. It's a new technology. It's kind of threatening feeling, but I think that the future of knowledge work will be dominated by people who use AI. And so if you've been resistant to it, just check it out. give it a go. Like it is certainly game-changing technology.
Try out the platforms, and it's never too late to learn. That's
Exactly.
and just live on it in a good way. It is all very intuitive. So even when you're not a technical person, you can still learn it and you can
Yep,
still apply it to your daily life.
that's right.
Well, thank you so much for making the time today. I really appreciate that. It was really great to have you here in this interview. Yeah, I was very impressed with ClearScope. I encourage everyone to try it out. Is there any last remarks you would like to make on the product or on the future of AI?
No, no, just thank you again for having me, Victor. Lots of fun. And yeah, I hope to see y'all around.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Okay, thanks a lot. And please don't forget to like and subscribe the channel. That's the best way to support the channel here on YouTube. That keeps us from, that actually helps us to keep the good videos rolling. Thanks a lot. See you next time.